When a catastrophe hits, what's our first impulse? It's to help, right? We see the images of devastation and we get this powerful, gut-level urge to just do something. But here's the thing. What if the most common ways we try to help, the boxes of clothes, the canned food, what if they actually make things worse? Today, we're going to dig into the massive, often invisible challenges of getting aid to where it's needed most, and how that road paved with good intentions can sometimes lead straight into a second disaster.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to talk about this wild phenomenon called the second disaster. Then we'll dive into a real-world catastrophe to see exactly how it all plays out. After that, we'll untangle the absolute nightmare that is logistics in a disaster zone. And finally, we'll figure out how we can actually genuinely be part of the solution.
So let's start with this core paradox. After a natural disaster strikes, a second one often follows. But this one isn't caused by wind or water. No, this one's caused, well, by us, by our own generosity.
And you can totally see where this person's coming from, right? It feels good to donate stuff. It's tangible. You can hold that can of beans. You can fold that t-shirt. It feels like you're making a direct personal connection. Cash, on the other hand, well, it can feel cold, anonymous, like it's just going to vanish into some administrative black hole. That box of supplies feels like real help.
But, and this is the big but, what if that very tangible item, that personal connection we're trying to forge, is actually creating a mountain of new problems for the people on the ground? What if we're accidentally clogging up the system and getting in the way?
Well, it actually has a name, the second disaster. And it's not just about getting too much stuff. It's about getting the wrong stuff at the wrong time in the wrong place. Think of the roads, the airports, the ports as the arteries of a relief effort. Life-saving supplies need to get through fast. The second disaster is when those arteries get clogged with expired food, winter coats in a tropical climate, and just stuff. It causes a massive logistical heart attack.
And look, this isn't just a theory. After some awful tornadoes tore through Oklahoma, one small community became a dumping ground for donations. They were literally buried, drowning, in more diapers and toiletries than they could ever possibly use. That mountain of stuff just got in the way. And what did they actually need? Cash. Just money to pay for a deposit on a new apartment, to buy tools, to start putting their own lives back together.
To really get our heads around the scale of this problem, we need to look at a true worst-case scenario. And for that, we're going to use one of the most powerful storms ever recorded as our case study, Super Typhoon Haiyan. On November 8, 2013, this monster of a storm just slammed into the central Philippines. We're talking sustained winds of 195 miles per hour. This wasn't just a bad storm. It was a catastrophic event that would push the entire global humanitarian system to its absolute breaking point.
The human cost it's just almost impossible to comprehend. 14 million people affected. That's more than the entire population of some countries. 4.1 million people were forced from their homes. Over 1 million homes were damaged or just gone. This wasn't a local event. This was a regional cataclysm.
And in those first hours and days, it was a total system collapse. Everything just stopped. No power, no clean water, no way to call for help. The local government officials who were supposed to be leading the response, they were victims too. The basic structures that hold society together just vanished overnight. And that is the chaos that aid had to somehow flow into.
So you've got this massive population in desperate need and a complete and total breakdown of infrastructure. This is the perfect recipe for what the pros call a logistics nightmare. You see, getting the right aid to the right people at the right time is both an art and a science. And after Haiyan, it was nearly impossible.
There's this whole field called humanitarian logistics. And let me tell you, this isn't like waiting for your Amazon package. This is the science of moving supplies and critical information under the most extreme life or death conditions imaginable, where every single hour of delay can be measured in lives lost.
Their response was just hit by a cascade of failures. For the first 2 days, you just couldn't get in. Roads were gone, airports were trashed. Then, once they cleared a single runway, it immediately became a massive bottleneck. Planes were literally circling, unable to land. And even when aid finally touched the ground, there weren't enough trucks to move it anywhere. And on top of all that, you have the last mile problem. How do you get supplies from that one airport to hundreds of remote villages and islands that are completely cut off from the world?
And here's what's so critical to understand.
These problems weren't unique to Haiyan, not at all. Research across countless disasters shows the same pattern again and again. It's a recurring nightmare. Number one is almost always a lack of transport. You have the aid, but you can't move it. Then you've got nowhere to store it securely. Meanwhile, all the different aid groups are struggling to talk to each other, so you have these huge information gaps. And all of this is happening on top of destroyed infrastructure, with a critical shortage of trained people on the ground to manage the chaos.
So we've seen the physical challenges, the blocked roads, the broken ports. But that's only half the story. There's an equally massive human challenge, trying to coordinate the hundreds of different groups that all rush in to help. They all have different goals, different equipment, different ways of working. It's like trying to assemble a 10,000-piece puzzle during an earthquake. I mean, just think about who shows up. You've got the national government, which was completely crippled. You have foreign militaries arriving with massive ships and planes. You've got specialized UN agencies, huge international NGOs like the Red Cross. And, critically, you have the local community and religious groups who are always the real first responders. Getting all of these different players to work together, to not get in each other's way, is the single biggest challenge of coordination.
The scale of Haiyan was so unbelievable that 5 days in, the United Nations had to hit the big red button. They declared a level 3 emergency. That's the humanitarian equivalent of pulling every single fire alarm in the building at once. It's the highest, most serious designation possible, and it triggers a system-wide mobilization of money, people, and leadership from across the entire UN.
You know, a successful response often comes down to this really interesting partnership between two very different groups, militaries and non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. They bring completely different things to the table, but both are absolutely vital. The military has the muscle, the helicopters, the ships, the engineers who can clear a runway in a day. The NGOs bring the local knowledge, the community trust they've built over years, and specialized expertise in things like child protection or mental health. One just can't succeed without the other. But even with this massive global effort, the initial response was painfully slow. The Philippine government was just swamped. This forced other groups to get creative, and they started doing something called aid niching. Basically, an NGO or a foreign military would find one specific unfilled gap, like, hey, no one is getting aid to that group of islands, or nobody is providing trauma support, and they would pour all of their resources into solving just that one piece of the puzzle. It was a way to make real progress amid the chaos.
Okay, so we've walked through the disaster, the logistical nightmare, and the coordination puzzle. So let's bring it all the way back to that first impulse, that gut feeling to help, and figure out how we can channel our good intentions into actual good outcomes.
We started with this problem of the second disaster, all that chaos caused by well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful donations. So the crucial question is, how do we fix that? How do we become part of the solution instead of, part of the problem?
Well, the expert advice on this is incredibly consistent and clear. Number one, and this is by far the most important, give cash, not goods. I know it feels less personal, but it is exponentially more effective. It allows organizations on the ground to buy exactly what's needed, right there from local shops, which helps the shattered economy recover. Second, give to experienced organizations that have a proven track record. Third, if you want to volunteer, do it through a recognized group. Just showing up can make you another mouth to feed. And finally, remember the long term. The cameras always leave, but the need to rebuild homes, livelihoods, and mental health, that lasts for years. That's often when support is needed the most.
And maybe this is the most important lesson of all. We know these disasters are going to happen. We have decades of experience responding to them. The real tragedy isn't just the storm itself, it's failing to learn the clear, sometimes painful lessons that history has already taught us. The next superstorm, the next earthquake, it's coming. It's not a matter of if, but when. And when it strikes, that powerful human impulse to help is going to rise up in all of us. The choice we have to make is this: will we contribute to the chaos, or will we be part of a smarter, faster, more effective recovery? How will you choose to help?